This mystery's origins are condensed into the following two sentences. In 1981, did Yoko Ono grant her fans' wishes to have Paul McCartney, Pink Floyd, and The Who sing songs about his poster, Athena, and for those songs to become part of a real-life musical mystery inspired by the Beatles' Paul is Dead story from 1969. Those were my two wishes that the keepers of the wishing well granted. Reminder: some clues that may confirm the validity of this story are hidden in plain sight. In early November of 1979, the Iranian hostage crisis dominated the news. Day after day, newspapers and television screens were filled with fear, uncertainty, political anger, and growing tensions between nations. At the same time, the world still lived under the constant shadow of a possible nuclear war breaking out. Those events deeply affected me. The result was the creation in May of 1980 of a poster I eventually titled Athena the following year. At the center of the poster was a photograph of the atomic bombing of Nagasaki during World War II, sandwiched between the words "Peace on Earth, Goodwill towards Man" at the top, and "It's not just for Christmas anymore" at the bottom. That heading and footer were inspired by my grandfather's memories of how World War I might have ended if the 1914 Christmas truce had been allowed to continue. He carried deep anger toward the officers who ordered ordinary soldiers to resume shooting one another, restarting a war that many believed might have ended had the truce survived. Had that happened, my grandfather would never have found himself struggling to survive the horrors of trench warfare in France. Years later, Greg Lake's song "Father Christmas" touched on many of the same feelings my grandfather had about war, peace, and humanity's repeated failure to learn from history. Those ideas strongly influenced why I eventually placed those words onto my poster. At the time, I had no idea this poster would eventually become the center of a decades-long musical mystery. Then, on December 8, 1980, John Lennon was murdered outside the Dakota apartment building in New York City. Like millions of others around the world, I was stunned. Lennon had spent years speaking publicly about peace, imagination, and humanity, finding better ways to live together. His murder felt like more than the loss of a musician. It felt symbolic of something much larger going on behind the scenes. In response, I wrote a dedication to Lennon and added it to the remaining copies of my poster around January of 1981. The dedication reflected many of the ideals that Lennon and Yoko Ono had publicly stood for over the years regarding their views on peace and humanity. In early 1981, I brought the updated version of my poster to the Minneapolis record store, The Electric Fetus, where my original version of the poster had already been accepted for sale. But this time, I was told I would not be allowed to substitute the updated dedication version for the original poster already being sold. The explanation given to me was that after Lennon's murder, there were concerns about people attempting to profit from his death, like what had happened following Elvis Presley's passing a few years earlier. That moment changed everything. The refusal left me feeling that there was only one person in the world who truly had the moral right to decide whether a fan should be allowed to write a dedication to John Lennon and place it onto a poster encouraging world peace. That person was Yoko Ono herself. That realization led me to write a letter directly to Ono in 1981. At the time, I had no idea that letter, along with 4 copies of the Athena poster, might eventually become the starting point of one of the strangest and most unusual musical mysteries ever created. Nor did I realize that 2 other musicians who were present near the beginning of this story would later release songs relating to those events. One musician was Martha Davis of the Motels, who was working a traveling sales job with me during the writing of that letter. While we were working in Sheridan, Wyoming, I mentioned to Davis that I could not think of a name for my poster. Davis told me she would be back, then left the hotel room for a short time. Once Davis returned, she suggested the name Athena and told me that she found the name in a baby name book at the Sheridan Public Library. Once she started explaining the meanings behind the name, I realized that would be the perfect name for my poster. The other musician was Ivan Doroshuk of Men Without Hats, who, if I remember correctly, told me in February of 1984 that he was the person who noticed my record album-sized envelope after it tumbled out of a mailbag being emptied onto the floor, and that he jumped up to grab it. At the time, he and others were assisting Yoko Ono with sorting through and reading the massive number of letters sent to her following Lennon's death. That is how the mystery began. I now place solving this mystery in your hands. Detectives, the game is afoot. The following songs and videos introduce the first musical threads connected to the beginning of this mystery. Let your investigations commence, and hopefully the whole world will finally learn how to live in peace together while having fun trying to solve this musical mystery. This song by John and Yoko reminded me of a conversation I had with my grandfather about World War I when I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade. The song brought back memories of how that conversation helped shape my desire to someday inspire the whole world to learn how to live together in peace. I remember telling my grandfather that I was determined to somehow bring about world peace. To which he responded, "You're just a child. What can you do? Take my word for it, that will never happen." To which I can only respond today with, "Hold my near beer and watch me try to keep that promise I made to my grandfather by getting the whole world to enjoy solving this mystery." You will find below the text of this video, along with songs and descriptions of how those songs influenced my mystery, or how they are connected to my mystery, as well as a video telling you why I had to fly to London in September of 1983.